In the shadowy corridors of history, where whispered secrets echo through time, there exists a tantalizing possibility. A connection so profound, yet so carefully concealed, that it has eluded mainstream historical accounts for centuries. This is the story of an alliance forged between two seemingly disparate powers, the medieval Knights Templar and the ancient civilization of Egypt. What binds these entities, separated by thousands of years and vast cultural divides, is a thread of esoteric knowledge. Knowledge that, if fully revealed, might fundamentally alter our understanding of human history. The official historical record tells us the Knights Templar were founded in 1119 CE as a military order tasked with protecting Christian pilgrims journeying to the Holy Land. The ancient Egyptians, meanwhile, had long since faded into history, their magnificent civilization existing only in crumbling monuments and fragmented papyri. Yet beneath this conventional narrative lies a more compelling tale, one of secret transmissions of power, mystical wisdom preserved through millennia, and a brotherhood dedicated to guarding the most profound secrets of humanity's past. As we peel back the layers of accepted history, we discover curious anomalies and striking parallels. The Templars, ostensibly simple warrior monks, amassed extraordinary wealth and influence with unexplained rapidity. The Egyptians, masters of astronomy, mathematics, and engineering, created monuments that continue to defy modern explanation. Between these two civilizations exists a web of symbolic correspondences, architectural similarities, and shared mystical concepts that suggest not coincidence, but connection. This is an exploration into the shadows of history, where documented fact meets speculative possibility. It is a journey through hidden chambers, forgotten texts, and suppressed knowledge. What follows is the story of how the guardians of ancient Egyptian wisdom may have passed their sacred knowledge to the warrior monks who would become the most powerful organization of medieval Europe, and how that transmission continues to influence our world today. The official founding of the Knights Templar occurred in 1119 CE, when 9 French knights led by Hugh de Payens approached King Baldwin II of Jerusalem, offering to protect pilgrims traveling the dangerous roads to the Holy City. Their headquarters were established on the Temple Mount, the site of the ancient Temple of Solomon, a location that would prove significant beyond mere strategic value. For their first 9 years, this small band of knights accepted no new members, a curious detail that has fueled speculation about their true activities during this formative period. What history records next is remarkable by any standard. Within decades, this modest brotherhood transformed into medieval Europe's most formidable military, financial, and political force. The Templars developed Europe's first banking system, owned vast estates across multiple countries, commanded their own fleet of ships, and answered only to the Pope himself. This meteoric rise to power has never been satisfactorily explained through conventional historical analysis. The Templars were not merely warriors but became known as keepers of arcane knowledge. They were among the few literate groups of their time, maintaining extensive libraries and archives. Contemporary accounts describe them as men versed in mathematics, astronomy, architecture, and navigation, disciplines that mirror those of ancient Egypt's priestly class. Their iconic white mantle emblazoned with a red cross became a symbol not just of military might, but of mysterious wisdom. The order's sudden wealth has traditionally been attributed to donations from noble families and successful military campaigns. Yet the scale and speed of their financial ascendancy suggests alternative sources. Some historians have noted that the Templars returned from Jerusalem with skills and knowledge not previously known in Europe. They introduced advanced mathematical concepts, architectural techniques, and navigational methods that transformed European society. The question remains, from whom did they acquire this knowledge? The Templars' abrupt and violent suppression in 1307, orchestrated by King Philip IV of France and Pope Clement V, has been attributed to the king's financial debts to the order. Yet the charges against them, of heretical practices and secret rituals, hint at deeper concerns about their activities and beliefs. During the subsequent trials, many Templars confessed, under torture, to worshipping a mysterious head or idol called Baphomet, a detail that would later connect to Egyptian traditions of veneration of the head as a seat of spiritual power. When the last Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, was burned at the stake in 1314, he proclaimed the innocence of the order and famously cursed both King Philip and Pope Clement, both of whom died within the year. What happened to the vast Templar treasury, their fleet of ships, and, most importantly, their collected knowledge remains one of history's enduring mysteries. Long before the Templars set foot on the sands of the Holy Land, the civilization of ancient Egypt had developed an unparalleled system of spiritual, mathematical, and architectural knowledge. For over 3 millennia, Egypt maintained a remarkable continuity of religious and philosophical tradition, centered around concepts of cosmic order, immortality, and the divine nature of creation. At the heart of Egyptian wisdom stood the priesthood, keepers of sacred knowledge passed down through generations. These priest-scholars maintained extensive libraries and schools where mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and theology were studied and advanced. The temples of Egypt were not merely places of worship, but centers of learning and repositories of ancient wisdom. The famous Library of Alexandria, though established in the Hellenistic period, continued this Egyptian tradition of preserving knowledge. Egyptian mystical traditions centered around several key concepts that would later find echoes in Templar symbolism and practices. The concept of resurrection and immortality, embodied in the myth of Osiris, established a sophisticated understanding of life after death. The Egyptian Book of the Dead, more accurately translated as the Book of Coming Forth by Day, outlined precise spiritual technologies for navigating the afterlife, technologies that required an understanding of cosmic geography and divine forces. Sacred geometry permeated Egyptian culture, from the precise astronomical alignment of the pyramids to the proportional systems used in art and architecture. The Egyptians understood mathematical principles that would not be rediscovered in Europe until centuries later. Their architectural achievements, particularly the Great Pyramid of Giza, incorporated advanced mathematical constants, including pi and the golden ratio, and demonstrated a mastery of engineering that remained unsurpassed for millennia. The Egyptian hieroglyphic system was far more than a simple writing method. It was a sacred script that conveyed multiple layers of meaning simultaneously. Hieroglyphs were considered the words of the gods, capable of manifesting reality when properly inscribed and activated. This concept of language as a creative force would later find parallels in the Kabbalistic traditions that influenced certain Templar practices. By the time of the Crusades, Egyptian civilization had undergone numerous transformations under Greek, Roman, and finally Islamic rule. Yet the ancient wisdom had not disappeared. Evidence suggests that certain knowledge was preserved in secret by Coptic Christians, Hermetic societies, and Islamic mystical orders. The city of Alexandria, in particular, remained a center where Greek, Jewish, Christian, and Islamic scholars continued to study ancient Egyptian texts and traditions. The historical bridge connecting ancient Egyptian wisdom to the Knights Templar begins with the conquest of Egypt by Islamic forces in the 7th century CE. While many temples were converted to mosques and aspects of Egyptian culture suppressed, certain traditions were preserved within Sufi mystical orders and among Coptic Christians. These groups maintained libraries containing ancient texts and passed down esoteric teachings through carefully guarded initiatory systems. By the time of the First Crusade, that 1096 to 1099 CE, Egypt had been under Islamic rule for over 4 centuries, yet pockets of ancient knowledge remained. When Jerusalem fell to the Crusaders in 1099, a new chapter opened in the relationship between East and West. The subsequent establishment of the Crusader states created unprecedented opportunities for cultural exchange and for access to knowledge long hidden from European eyes. The Templars' headquarters on the Temple Mount placed them in a unique position. Historical records confirm that extensive excavations were conducted beneath the mount during the early years of Templar occupation. The official purpose was to expand and reinforce their quarters, but persistent legends suggest they discovered something of immense significance, possibly scrolls, artifacts, or even an underground chamber containing knowledge preserved from Solomon's time, which itself had connections to Egyptian wisdom. Several compelling circumstances suggest the Templars had access to Egyptian knowledge. First, the Templars maintained unusually cordial relations with certain Islamic leaders, particularly those associated with Sufi orders that had absorbed elements of ancient Egyptian mysticism. The assassins Hashashins, a Nizari Ismaili sect with whom the Templars had complex interactions, possessed libraries containing works on astronomy, mathematics, and mystical philosophy derived partly from Egyptian sources. Second, the Templars controlled significant territories near Alexandria and maintained a presence in Egypt during various Crusader campaigns. Alexandria remained the primary repository of ancient Egyptian texts, including those preserved in the Serapeum and other libraries that survived the famous destruction of the Great Library centuries earlier. Third, many Templars came from noble families with connections to Byzantine scholarship, which had preserved aspects of Hellenistic Egyptian learning. Byzantine libraries contained translations of Egyptian texts on mathematics, alchemy, and astronomy that had been largely unknown in Western Europe. Fourth, the Templars developed a distinctive architectural style that incorporated geometrical principles remarkably similar to those used in ancient Egyptian monuments. Their circular churches, in particular, employed proportional systems based on sacred geometry that paralleled Egyptian temple design. The famous Templar church at Lyon, France, contains astronomical alignments that mirror those found in temples along the Nile. Fifth, surviving Templar artifacts display symbolic elements with striking Egyptian parallels. The dual-riding knight image, 2 knights on a single horse, that became emblematic of the order bears a curious resemblance to depictions of Horus and Set in Egyptian art. The Templar cross itself, with its distinctive flared arms, echoes the Egyptian Ankh symbol of life eternal. The most compelling evidence for a Templar-Egyptian connection lies in the realm of symbolic correspondences and architectural parallels. Throughout Templar territories, from the Holy Land to Western Europe, structures associated with the order display features that suggest knowledge of Egyptian sacred geometry and astronomical alignment principles. The octagonal Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Tomar, Portugal, a major Templar stronghold, incorporates precise mathematical ratios identical to those found in the temple complex at Karnak. The church's unique window, aligned to capture the light during solstices and equinoxes, employs the same astronomical principles used in Egyptian solar temples. Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland, built by William Sinclair after the official dissolution of the Templars, contains an astonishing array of carvings that include Egyptian motifs alongside Christian imagery. The famous apprentice pillar incorporates a spiraling design that mathematically replicates the proportion systems used in Egyptian columns. The ceiling of the chapel contains musical cubes arranged in patterns that correspond to Egyptian mathematical progressions. The Templars' reputed worship of the mysterious Baphomet head finds curious parallels with the Egyptian veneration of the head of Osiris. In Egyptian tradition, the head was considered the seat of spiritual power, and ceremonial heads were used in resurrection rituals. The Templar confessions, though extracted under torture, consistently mentioned reverence for a head that granted wisdom and fertility, concepts centrally associated with Osiris worship. The famous Templar symbol of the Red Cross has been interpreted by some scholars as a concealed reference to the Egyptian Ankh, modified to avoid accusations of paganism. When the Templar cross is superimposed on the Ankh, the geometric correspondence is striking, suggesting deliberate adaptation rather than coincidence. Templar banking practices, including their system of letters of credit and mathematical approach to interest calculations, show remarkable similarities to Egyptian administrative methods documented in papyri from the Middle and New Kingdoms. The Templars' advanced understanding of mathematics, including concepts of geometry not generally known in medieval Europe, parallels Egyptian mathematical knowledge preserved in texts like the Rhind Papyrus. Archaeological excavations at Templar sites have occasionally yielded artifacts with unmistakable Egyptian influences. A seal discovered at the Templar preceptory in Tyre bears hieroglyphic-like inscriptions alongside Latin text. A reliquary found at a Templar church in France contained what appears to be a fragment of papyrus with Coptic writing, suggesting a direct link to Egyptian Christian traditions that preserved ancient knowledge. Perhaps most intriguing are the maps allegedly possessed by the Templars. Historical records indicate they had access to navigational charts of remarkable accuracy, including knowledge of Atlantic currents and possibly even the Americas. Such cartographic expertise mirrors the Egyptian tradition of precise geographical mapping, exemplified by artifacts like the Turin Papyrus map, the oldest known topographical map in history. The Crusades created unprecedented opportunities for cultural exchange between East and West. While officially religious military campaigns, they also served as vectors for transmission of knowledge long lost to European consciousness. The Knights Templar, as the most prominent and well-organized of the crusading orders, were ideally positioned to access and preserve such knowledge. Historical records confirm that during the Second Crusade, 1147 to 1149 CE, significant diplomatic exchanges occurred between Templar representatives and Egyptian scholars in Alexandria. Ostensibly focused on negotiating the safety of Christian pilgrims, these meetings allowed extended contact with guardians of ancient texts and traditions. The Templar presence in Egypt during the Fifth Crusade, 1207 to 1221 CE, included an extended occupation of Damietta, near the ancient city of Tanis, which contained important archaeological sites with intact hieroglyphic inscriptions. Chronicles from this period mention Templar knights conducting excavations at various sites, officially searching for biblical relics, but potentially accessing far older Egyptian artifacts and texts. The Templars maintained unusually cordial diplomatic relations with certain Egyptian leaders, particularly during periods when open warfare had ceased. These diplomatic channels facilitated cultural and intellectual exchange. Records in the Vatican archives reference gifts of ancient manuscripts, being presented to Templar Grand Masters by Egyptian emissaries, gifts that never appear in official Templar inventories. A particularly suggestive connection involves the Templars' interaction with the Assassins sect, whose libraries contain preserved works from Alexandria. Historical documents confirm that the Templars negotiated a complex relationship with this group, including payment of tribute and exchange of knowledge. The Assassins possessed texts on mathematics, astronomy, and medicine derived from ancient Egyptian sources, preserved through Ismaili and Sufi traditions. The Templars' rapid acquisition of naval expertise after establishing themselves in the Holy Land suggests contact with Egyptian maritime traditions. Their fleet, which quickly became the most advanced in the Mediterranean, employed navigational techniques and ship designs that incorporated elements traceable to Egyptian seafaring methods, documented in temple reliefs at Deir el-Bahari. Archaeological evidence from Templar sites in Acre and Jerusalem includes fragments of Egyptian artifacts and copies of hieroglyphic inscriptions, suggesting active study of Egyptian symbolism and language. A remarkable stone chest excavated from beneath a Templar compound in Acre contained papyrus fragments with both hieratic Egyptian script and Greek annotations, suggesting translation activity. The Templars' growing interest in astronomy during their time in the Holy Land mirrors Egyptian celestial observation traditions. Records indicate that Templar preceptories included astronomical observation chambers aligned according to principles identical to those used in Egyptian temples dedicated to stellar observation, such as the Temple of Hathor at Dendera. The sudden suppression of the Knights Templar in 1307 did not eradicate their influence or the knowledge they had acquired. Historical evidence suggests that many Templars escaped the arrests, taking with them treasures both material and intellectual. Scotland, Portugal, and parts of Germany became havens for fugitive knights, where Templar traditions continued under different guises. In Scotland, the St. Sinclair family provided protection to Templar refugees and incorporated their traditions into nascent Masonic lodges. Rosslyn Chapel, built by William St. Clair between 1446 and 1484, stands as a cryptic monument encoding Templar knowledge in stone. The chapel's elaborate carvings include Egyptian symbols alongside Christian imagery, and its architectural proportions follow the sacred geometry principles found in both Templar churches and Egyptian temples. The Portuguese Order of Christ, officially established to absorb Templar assets in Portugal, maintained essential continuity with Templar traditions. Under the leadership of Prince Henry the Navigator, this order sponsored voyages of discovery using navigational knowledge allegedly derived from Egyptian sources via the Templars. The distinctive cross of the Order of Christ, which adorned the sails of Portuguese explorers, retains elements of both the Templar cross and the Egyptian ankh. Certain elements of Templar knowledge appear to have been absorbed into early Freemasonry, which emerged in Scotland and England during the 17th century. Masonic ritual, symbolism, and teachings contain numerous parallels to both Templar traditions and Egyptian mystical concepts. The emphasis on architectural symbolism, resurrection myths, and astronomically aligned initiation chambers suggests preservation of Egyptian Templar synthesis. The Rosicrucian movement, which appeared in Europe in the early 17th century, claimed inheritance of ancient Egyptian wisdom through a lineage that included the Templars. Rosicrucian texts explicitly reference the Egyptian mysteries and describe a transmission of knowledge from Alexandria to various European esoteric brotherhoods, with the Templars serving as a crucial link in this chain. Banking and financial systems developed by the Templars revolutionized European economics and continued long after the order's suppression. Modern banking practices, including credit instruments and trust structures, derive directly from Templar innovations that parallel Egyptian administrative systems documented in papyri from the Middle and New Kingdoms. Templar architectural knowledge influenced subsequent European building traditions, particularly Gothic cathedral construction. The mathematical principles employed in these structures, including the use of the golden ratio, specific geometric progressions, and astronomical alignments, show remarkable parallels to Egyptian sacred architecture. The cathedral at Chartres, in particular, incorporates design elements that suggest influence from both Templar and Egyptian sources. Cartographic knowledge allegedly possessed by the Templars appears to have informed later European exploration. Maps attributed to Templar sources show coastlines and features unknown to conventional European geography of the period, but consistent with Egyptian cartographic traditions. The controversial Piri race map, compiled in 1513, but allegedly based on older sources, contains information suggesting access to ancient Egyptian geographical knowledge. If the speculative connection between the Knights Templar and ancient Egypt is substantiated, the implications for our understanding of history are profound. Such a connection would represent not merely an interesting historical footnote, but a fundamental reconsideration of how knowledge has been transmitted across civilizations and eras. The conventional historical narrative presents human knowledge as developing in a largely linear progression, with occasional setbacks during periods like the European Dark Ages. The Templar-Egyptian connection suggests instead a more complex model, one in which advanced knowledge can be preserved in secret, transmitted through initiatory lineages, and re-emerge in unexpected contexts. This alternative historical model challenges our understanding of the European Renaissance. Rather than representing primarily a rediscovery of classical Greek and Roman knowledge, the Renaissance may have been fueled in part by the emergence of Egyptian wisdom preserved and transmitted by groups like the Templars. The sudden flowering of mathematics, astronomy, architecture, and navigation in Renaissance Europe becomes more comprehensible if we recognize the potential influence of Egyptian knowledge channeled through Templar and post-Templar organizations. The religious and philosophical implications are equally significant. The Templars' alleged heterodox beliefs, which included elements later condemned as heretical, may reflect exposure to Egyptian theological concepts that challenged conventional Christian doctrine. The Egyptian understanding of divinity as simultaneously unified and manifested in multiple forms parallels certain Gnostic Christian teachings that influenced esoteric Templar thought. Perhaps most importantly, the Templar-Egyptian connection suggests that our conventional understanding of ancient Egyptian civilization remains incomplete. If the Templars indeed accessed Egyptian knowledge that enabled them to create revolutionary financial systems, architectural innovations, and navigational methods, then the technological and intellectual achievements of ancient Egypt were far more advanced than commonly recognized. The persistent questions surrounding Egyptian achievements, from the construction techniques of the pyramids to their astronomical knowledge, gain new context. This hidden alliance between ancient wisdom and medieval power also illuminates the pattern of knowledge suppression throughout history. The violent elimination of the Templars, like the earlier destruction of the Library of Alexandria, represents a recurring historical pattern wherein centers of knowledge that challenge prevailing paradigms face systematic eradication. The survival of Egyptian wisdom through such episodes testifies to the resilience of knowledge transmission systems operating outside official channels. For modern researchers, The Templar-Egyptian connection opens new avenues of investigation. Archaeological excavations at Templar sites might be re-examined with attention to Egyptian influences. The cryptic symbolism of Templar artifacts could be reinterpreted through the lens of Egyptian sacred iconography. Manuscript collections associated with post-Templar organizations might reveal previously unrecognized references to Egyptian concepts and teachings. The tantalizing threads connecting the Knights Templar to ancient Egyptian wisdom weave a tapestry that challenges conventional historical narratives. While conclusive proof of direct transmission remains elusive, the cumulative weight of circumstantial evidence, symbolic correspondences, and historical anomalies suggests that something profound connected these seemingly disparate cultures across the gulf of time. The Templars' extraordinary rise to power, their advanced knowledge of mathematics, architecture, navigation, and finance, and their sudden violent suppression all take on new significance when viewed through the lens of Egyptian connection. The persistence of certain symbolic elements, architectural principles, and esoteric concepts from ancient Egypt through the Templars into modern secret societies suggests a continuous thread of transmission rather than coincidental reinvention. Perhaps the most compelling aspect of this hidden alliance is how it illuminates the nature of knowledge transmission throughout human history. Beyond the official narratives of conquests, religious conversions, and political upheavals lies another history, one of secret preservations, initiatory transmissions, and carefully guarded wisdom passed down through generations. This shadow history reminds us that what we know of our past is always incomplete, always subject to revision as new evidence emerges. The mystery of the Templars and their possible Egyptian connection remains unsolved, perhaps deliberately so. As the French writer André Malraux observed, the greatest mystery is not that we have been flung at random between the profusion of matter and of the stars, but that within this prison we can draw from ourselves images powerful enough to deny our nothingness. The Templar-Egyptian connection, whether historical reality or elaborate myth, continues to exercise power over our imagination precisely because it suggests that human knowledge is not merely accumulated through linear progress, but preserved through dedication, encoded in symbol, and transmitted through initiation. In the end, the true legacy of this hidden alliance may be the questions it compels us to ask. What other connections remain concealed in history's shadows? What ancient wisdom awaits rediscovery? And what might we learn from civilizations of the past that could illuminate our future? These questions, like the mystery itself, remain open, inviting each new generation to continue the search for knowledge that transcends time.